I still remember that day as clearly as if it just happened. I walked into the operating room like I did every morning, ready for another long procedure. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, and the steady hum of the ventilation system echoed off the sterile walls. Everything looked ordinary. The nurses were setting up instruments, the anesthesiologist was checking the monitors, and my team was focused, calm, professional. The patient that day was a middle-aged man named John Chang. He suffered from severe heart disease, something I'd seen hundreds of times before. The operation wasn't supposed to be unusually difficult, but the moment I stepped through those doors, a strange chill ran through me. It was subtle, but unmistakable. An instinctive, uneasy feeling that something about that room wasn't right. The procedure began smoothly. John was fully anesthetized, his vital signs steady. I made the first incision, focusing on each precise movement. The sound of the heart monitor ticked rhythmically, a sound every surgeon learns to find comfort in. Then it happened. John's eyes suddenly opened. "Is he awake?" one of the nurses gasped. The anesthesiologist quickly checked the readings. "No, his dosage is fine. He shouldn't be conscious." But John's eyes were wide, filled with pure terror. His pupils contracted sharply as he stared straight upward, not at the surgical lights, but beyond them. His lips trembled. For a moment, no sound came out. Then, with a hoarse cracking whisper, he spoke. "She's here. She's watching me." A cold shiver crawled down my spine. I looked around the room. Only my team was there, no one else. "John, it's okay," I said carefully, keeping my voice calm. "You're under anesthesia. We're performing your surgery. Try to relax." But he didn't hear me. His breathing quickened, and his hand began to twitch against the restraints. Then, slowly, he lifted one trembling finger and pointed toward the far corner of the room. "She's right there. Don't let her come near me." The room fell silent. Every head turned toward that corner. The light there was dimmer, shadowed by the equipment stand. Nothing seemed out of place, just machines and cables. But the air suddenly felt heavier, colder. "It's just an anesthetic reaction," the anesthesiologist muttered under his breath, as if to reassure himself. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided looking at that corner. "Give him a little more anesthetic," I ordered, trying to keep my voice steady. The nurse adjusted the line. For a moment, it seemed to help. John's body relaxed slightly, but then the overhead lights flickered. Once, twice. And everything changed. The room felt suffocating. John began trembling violently on the table, his pulse racing. He wasn't looking up anymore. His gaze was fixed on that same corner. His voice broke into a desperate whisper. "She's smiling. She's still there, smiling at me." A couple of nurses stepped back instinctively. One of them whispered, "Doctor, something's wrong." "Focus!" I snapped, though my own heart was pounding. I forced myself to look back at the surgical field, to ignore the suffocating dread pressing against my chest. It had to be stress, nerves, imagination. Then, amid the whirring machines and the sharp scent of antiseptic, I heard it. A voice. Low, raspy, cold. It came from the corner of the room. "He is coming to stay with me." My hands froze midair. The entire team went still. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. My breath came out in visible wisps. Then the monitors went wild. "Heart rate spiking," a nurse shouted. "He's crashing." "Defibrillator. Now," I barked, snapping out of my trance. The nurses scrambled to prepare the paddles. But before we could act, John's head jerked violently toward that corner. His eyes widened to an unnatural size, his mouth moving soundlessly, as if trying to scream. "She's here," he whispered one last time. Then his body went limp. The monitor screamed its flat, unbroken tone. The room was silent again. No one spoke. The only sound was the flatline echoing through the sterile air. When the procedure was officially called, I removed my gloves and stepped out of the operating room, feeling like I'd aged 10 years in a single hour. Outside, I sat on the bench, staring blankly at the tiled floor. But that voice, that chilling whisper, kept replaying in my head. Later, I glanced up at the frosted glass window of the operating room, and for just a second, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing there in the shadows, watching me. Even now, I can't shake that feeling. That room wasn't empty that day. There was someone, or something, else with us. And sometimes, late at night, when I walk past those same operating rooms, I still feel it. The weight of unseen eyes, and the faint echo of a voice whispering, "He's coming to stay with me." Night shifts always carry a certain weight, that eerie stillness that settles over the corridors when the world outside is asleep. But nowhere does it feel heavier than in the morgue. When I first started my internship, I didn't think much of it. Watching over the morgue at night didn't seem like a big deal. Just a room, a logbook, and a few silent drawers. Nothing more. That illusion didn't last long. It was one of those moonless, windy nights when the hospital was unusually quiet. The clock on the wall had just struck midnight. I was sitting alone at the small desk, scrolling through my phone, counting the minutes until I could go home. Then the phone rang. The sharp, mechanical ring split through the silence like a scream. I froze, staring at it. No one ever called this line, especially not at this hour. After a moment of hesitation, I picked up the receiver. "Morgue. Who's calling?" I asked, trying to sound calm. There was no response. Just silence. I waited, listening. Then, faintly, so faintly I thought I imagined it, I heard breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. "Hello?" I said again, more uneasy this time. Nothing. Only that same quiet, rhythmic breathing, close enough that it felt like it was in my ear. I was about to hang up when I finally heard it. A voice. "I'm still here." It was low, raspy, and cold enough to send a chill straight through my spine. I nearly dropped the receiver. My voice shook as I said, "Who is this? What are you talking about?" But the line went dead. The only thing left was the long, hollow beep, beep, beep of the disconnected call. I sat there, frozen, gripping the phone. My mind raced for a logical explanation. Maybe someone was pulling a prank. Maybe a crossed line. I forced a nervous laugh and tried to shake it off. But then, the phone rang again. This time the ring was louder, shriller, like it wanted to be answered. My hands were trembling as I picked it up. "Morgue," I said, my voice barely steady. "Who is this?" For a moment, only silence. Then, that same voice returned. "I'm still here." My throat went dry. The voice sounded distant, muffled, as if coming through layers of air and time, yet close enough to whisper in my ear. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Is this some kind of joke?" I asked, my words trembling. The voice paused, then answered softly, almost like a sigh. "Come find me." That was it. I slammed the phone down, my palms slick with sweat. I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed to do something. Find the night doctor. Check the equipment. Anything. I turned toward the door. Before I could take a step, the phone rang a third time. The sound froze me where I stood. I knew, deep down, that it wasn't a prank. Whatever was on the other end of that line wasn't human. Not anymore. Still, I picked it up. Slowly. This time, I didn't say a word. After a long silence, the voice spoke again. Faint, broken, and colder than ever. "I'm in the freezer." My entire body went cold. The freezer. The cold storage where the bodies were kept. I dropped the phone and bolted for the door. But something, curiosity, dread, I don't know, made me stop halfway down the hallway. I turned back. I had to look. When I opened the freezer room, the air hit me like a wave of ice. My breath came out in clouds. Everything looked normal. The drawers lined up neatly, the tags in place. But I felt it. The weight of someone's eyes on me, watching, waiting. Then, creak. One of the drawers slid open by itself. Slowly, painfully slow. The sound echoed through the room, scraping against my nerves. I stared, paralyzed. Inside lay a body, a man who'd died just a few days earlier in a car accident. I remembered when his family came to identify him, how they cried outside the door, begging him to come back. Now, his head turned, just slightly, but enough for me to see his half-open eyes staring straight at me. I'm still here. I don't remember running, only the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears as I stumbled out of the morgue and down the hall. Since that night, I've refused to work alone down there again. Sometimes, though, when I pass that corridor during the night shift, I still hear it, the sharp ring of a phone that shouldn't be ringing. And I know whoever, or whatever, called me that night is still waiting for someone to pick up. I've worked as a nurse in this hospital for 3 years now, and you'd think I'd be used to everything that comes with the night shift. The stillness, the flickering lights, the distant hum of machines. But no matter how long I've been here, there are parts of this place that never stop making my skin crawl, especially the elevator. It's old, older than the new wings of the hospital, and it's always been a little off. It moves slower than it should, makes soft mechanical groans, and sometimes, even when no one calls it, the doors open on empty floors. You tell yourself it's just a glitch in the wiring, but when it happens after midnight, in an empty corridor, that sound of the doors sliding open feels like something breathing. One night, around 3 a.m, I had to deliver a patient's test results up to the 5th floor. The building was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your own footsteps sound intrusive. When I reached the elevator, it was waiting for me on the 1st floor. The doors opened with a metallic ding, and a rush of cold air rolled out. I hesitated for just a second before stepping in. I pressed the button for the 5th floor, and the elevator began to move. Everything was fine until it passed the 2nd floor. Then, with a faint jolt, it stopped. I looked up. The panel showed Level 3. No one had pressed that button. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. The hallway beyond was dim, lit by a few weak fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. It was completely empty. I leaned forward slightly, half expecting to see someone waiting, but there was no one there. Just stillness. I reached to press close, but before my finger touched the button, I felt it. The faintest brush of air, like someone had just walked in beside me. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw them. A pair of white nurse's shoes, standing right next to mine. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard footsteps, hadn't seen anyone enter. Slowly, almost against my will, I turned my head. There was a woman standing beside me. She was wearing a nurse's uniform. Our uniform. Perfectly pressed and spotless. Her head was bowed, long black hair falling forward to hide most of her face. She stood still, staring straight ahead at the closed elevator doors. "Are you here for shift change?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling slightly. No answer. She didn't move. Didn't even breathe. The doors closed, and the elevator began to rise again. The air grew colder. My palms were damp, and I could feel my pulse in my throat. I tried not to look, but my eyes drifted downward to her hand. They were pale. Too pale. The fingers were long, stiff, and the nails looked almost translucent, like glass. I forced myself to look away. The seconds dragged on endlessly. I could hear the faint hum of the elevator motor and the rhythmic pounding of my heart. Then, the light flickered. Once. Twice. And in that brief flash of darkness, I saw her hair shift slightly, just enough to reveal a glimpse of her face. Or what should have been her face. There were no eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth, colorless skin stretched over where her features should have been. A blank, human-shaped void. I froze. My scream caught somewhere deep in my throat before finally tearing its way out. I slammed my hands against the buttons. All of them. Desperate to make the elevator stop. When it finally jolted to a halt at the 5th floor, I bolted out before the doors had fully opened. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I turned around just once. The elevator was empty. Completely empty. The doors slid closed again with a calm ding, as if nothing had happened. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, shaking. Eventually, I forced myself to deliver the report and finish the shift. I told myself over and over that it was exhaustion, just a hallucination. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. A few days later, I told the other nurses what I'd seen. I expected them to laugh, or at least tell me I was imagining things. But instead, one of the older nurses went pale. "You're not the first," she whispered. 10 years ago, a nurse collapsed in that same elevator. She'd been on shift for 36 hours straight. When they found her, she was gone, suffocated, on the 3rd floor. I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart started racing again. They say her spirit never left. The older nurse continued softly. Sometimes she appears on that floor, in the elevator, still wearing her uniform. They say she lost her face when she died. Maybe she's still looking for it. Now, whenever I work nights and hear the elevator doors open on their own, I freeze. Sometimes I imagine her standing there, head bowed, waiting quietly for someone to ride with her. Would you step inside if she was waiting for you? I'll never forget that day. As a cardiologist, I've spent years surrounded by sickness, surgery, and death. You learn to distance yourself emotionally. It's the only way to keep going. But nothing I'd seen before prepared me for what happened that afternoon. Her name was Grace Zhang, a woman in her late 50s with chronic heart failure. I'd treated her for years. She was always polite, soft-spoken, the kind of patient every doctor hopes for. Grateful, kind, and full of quiet dignity. Her son accompanied her to nearly every appointment, never leaving her side. Their bond was something beautiful in a place so often filled with loss. Then, one night, her heart gave out. We did everything we could, shocks, compressions, medication, but she slipped away on the table. I was the one who broke the news to her son. I still remember how he collapsed to the floor, sobbing, clutching her hand until they took her body away. That was months ago. One quiet afternoon, I was back in my office, reviewing charts between appointments. The nurse knocked softly on the door. "Dr. Lin," she said, "your next patient is here. Mrs. Grace Zhang." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. "Who?" I asked. "Mrs. Zhang. She said she has a follow-up today," the nurse replied, checking the chart in her hand. "It's right here, her file, her photo." My heart skipped a beat. The room suddenly felt colder. That name, that voice, belonged to someone who shouldn't exist anymore. Before I could respond, the door opened, and she walked in. Grace stood there, smiling the same gentle smile I'd seen countless times before. She wore her usual blue cardigan and spoke with that same calm tone. "Dr. Lin," she said warmly. "It's been a while. I came for my checkup. My heart's been feeling much better lately." I stared at her, unable to breathe. Her face, her voice, everything was exactly the same. Too real to be imagined. "Mrs. Zhang?" I managed, forcing a smile to hide the panic rising inside me. "Of course, please, have a seat." She sat down across from me, folded her hands neatly, and said, "My son's been busy, so I came by myself today. I just wanted to make sure everything's fine with my heart." I turned to my computer, hands trembling, and opened her chart, and froze. Across the top of the screen, next to her name, were 2 words in bold red letters. Deceased. My mouth went dry. I stared at the screen, then at her. She was still smiling, eyes calm, waiting patiently for my reply. "Dr. Lin, are you all right?" she asked gently, tilting her head. I swallowed hard. My voice barely came out. "You said you've been feeling better?" She nodded. Much better, actually. Ever since I left last time, I feel lighter, freer somehow. But sometimes... She paused, looking down, thoughtfully. Sometimes I feel different, like I don't belong in the same way I used to. Her words sent a chill crawling up my neck. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, nodding, pretending this was normal, that the woman in front of me wasn't supposed to be buried months ago. After a few minutes, Grace stood up and smiled again. "Thank you, Dr. Lin. I'll come back for another checkup soon." I nodded stiffly, unable to speak. I watched her turn, open the door, and walk down the hall. Her footsteps were slow, steady, echoing softly until they faded away. When I finally snapped out of it, I rushed to the nurse's station. "Where did Mrs. Zhang go?" I asked urgently. The nurse blinked in confusion. "Who?" "The woman who just left my office, Grace Zhang." She frowned. "Doctor, I didn't see anyone leave your room. I was sitting here the whole time." The air felt heavy. I turned back toward the corridor, now completely empty. Later that evening, I checked her file again. Her death certificate was still there, dated and signed by me. Out of desperation, I even called her son. He confirmed everything. His mother had died months ago. They'd buried her, held a funeral, even placed flowers at her grave. He thanked me again for everything I'd done. I hung up the phone, staring at the dark window of my office, my reflection pale and shaken. I don't know what I saw that day, or who she really was. But every time I sit in that same room, when the afternoon light hits the doorway just right, I swear I can still see her silhouette standing there, smiling, waiting for her follow-up appointment.